Hey everyone, welcome to my second video of the Anatomy of a Pinup series on YouTube. In this video I am going to show you how I draw a Green Lantern commission. I have done this Green Lantern commission some time ago, but I think it will still be interesting for you guys to see how I approach it because it is a little bit more elaborate than my last pinup, the first pinup, Batman Gotham by Gaslight pinup. But I think it's very interesting. I will show you guys how I work with pencil, ink, whiteout, and screen tones on paper, and how I apply some, kind of tricks and other things that you can see in this video. I hope you guys like what you see. If you like what you see, please comment, like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram as well. It's at Sedat Özgen. Enjoy the video and see you soon. Bye bye. Alright everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Anatomy of Drawing a Comic Pinup. In this episode I will be showing you how I approach drawing a Green Lantern pinup. As you can see, I'm starting with a pose that I'm obviously not liking, and I'm erasing it right away. And I'm heading towards a different, approach and pose, and I can tell right away that I'm starting to, like it. I'm just, trying to figure out and find the right pose in which I can make it, shine more. And I wanted to talk with you guys about giving up on stuff and how sometimes when something isn't working right away, that you shouldn't, immediately give up on things. Instead, you should, try to figure out what is wrong with your drawing and what exactly you don't like about it. And one of the, rather cool things about it is when you don't like something about your own work is that you can go and check someone else's artwork and try to figure out what you liked about something they have drawn. And in that regard you can see if they have a similar piece that is drawn in a similar manner, and try to figure out what it is that you like about that drawing, and why you think it is better than your own. And this way you will be able to first of all figure out how you can do it better, and you will maybe and hopefully understand how you can make your own drawing more interesting. For example, if you look at this figure that I'm drawing now, which is Green Lantern holding a sword. It's going to be an energy sword that he's holding. The thing here is that his body has way more tension, and despite the fact that that he's holding it up, it looks like he's very powerful and very energetic, and his muscles look very tense, and it could be before a battle or after a battle or a fight with someone in which he's now showing his full energy, sort of like the Highlander, there can only be one sort of thing. And I'm very pleased with where the drawing is going here, and I'm now figuring out the perspective for this drawing. Since it is a pin-up, I didn't bother too much about finding a perspective that fits the drawing, because with these kind of sketches, this kind of stuff always sort of comes natural, and I think it worked really well here. I also added some stones that are flying through the picture, and now I'm adding a background which is sort of a rocky kind of planet, and you see energy bursts in on the ground. And I am really liking where it's going, and it shows you that just because you didn't get something right um, in your first attempt, you shouldn't, be giving up, or you shouldn't be frustrated. Of course, it can be frustrating sometimes to do stuff like that, but on the other hand, you know, sometimes out of frustration comes inspiration, and sometimes you have to fail sometimes in order to succeed in other regards. And I think if everyone gave up after the first failed attempt, I think we'd all be doing nothing and just sitting around like idiots and be total quitters. But that's not what you guys are. You aren't quitters, and we don't give up. We continue to draw. We continue to basically fight, and that's how you improve. That's how you become better at everything you do. And now I'm starting with the ink, and I'm using a aqua Pentel aqua brush pen, which I filled with um, China ink, and I'm now spotting the blacks first. The reason why I'm doing that, and I think I mentioned it in my first video, is that when I start using, or when I start spotting the blacks in my pinups, I'll usually end up uh, having less trouble, figuring out stuff. I won't be, drawing myself into a corner, and because if I know how and where the heavy shadows are, I won't be having to, or I won't be adding, details in those areas that shouldn't be there, because obviously I want to keep the focus on Green Lantern's face, um, and the sword, and and this is basically the stage where I'm figuring that stuff out. The cool thing about these brush pens is that you can have very fine lines, but you can also make like very broad strokes, which can make the whole drawing look way more vivid. And with those thicker lines, there can be some really interesting, and energetic strokes in there. And I hope that it shows, and I hope that you guys like it so far. And um, and now I'm using a different brush pen here, because that brush pen is a little bit more dry, and it gives the whole thing a little bit more texture. And I'm now using it in order to create those energy lines for the sword. And there's my mandatory Instagram picture. By the way, if you're not following me on Instagram yet, please go and follow me. It's at Sedat Özgen on Instagram, and at Sedat Özgen Art on Facebook. And yeah, I'm now starting to flesh out the whole piece, and I like where this is going, and I like how this is starting to become a illustration from just a few lines. It all of a sudden becomes a fleshed out illustration, and that is always the best feeling, especially when you are getting there. And I have to admit to you guys that once I see that the picture is going where I like that it's going, I get a certain degree of anxiety, because now I'm afraid that I may screw it up. But as I said earlier, we don't give up, we continue. And maybe you will make some sort of mistake, and I'm pretty sure I made a bunch of mistakes in this drawing, but I figured ways out in order to make it work. You always have to think about it like this: you are not here to make the perfect illustration, but you're here to create an illusion, and an illusion that works, that's that conveys something or a certain idea that you want to bring across. And this is what I'm, doing with this uh, Green Lantern piece, and I think it's turning out nicely. And I am now starting to add, more lines to the background. I'm starting with the energy burst, and I'm using my dried out uh, brush pen in order to make those lines look even more vivid. And I think it's working, and I like where it's going, because if I wouldn't like it, I'd probably try to figure out a way to save the drawing, but it's working right now. And now adding some details to the rocks and stones that are flying through the picture because of the energy burst that's taking place there, because of Green Lantern's sword, or him summoning up the energy, whatever he's doing. It's supposed to look epic. There's a little bit of storytelling in here without having to use an actual story, or word balloons or anything like that. We can see that Green Lantern is on a rocky sort of planet in space or whatever, and he's preparing for battle, and his sword is coming out of his ring, and that's all this piece is about. It's about conveying an idea. And we know that these comic book characters stand for something. They stand for certain ideas, or they are iconic figures. And in order to add something to it, we try to basically tell their stories again and again. And there you can see I'm making a circle for a background, which is going to be some sort of space or alien planet. And now I'm working on the speed, not speed lines, energy bursts that are coming out of the ground. I'm adding those mostly because sometimes it can be boring to just draw more stuff on the ground, and I didn't want to take away too much from the figures. So I thought energy bursts are a good idea. And look at the picture and you see it's coming along nicely. And I think if you remember what the first attempt of the sketch looked like, you will see that it is now becoming something that you wouldn't have seen in the initial sketch. And I like it. I like where it's going. And that this is something that you got to keep in mind when you're doing something. Quitting is always the worst option, because if you give up, you never know what it may have become, or what it could have become. Of course, when you see that something's not working, then you need to figure out how to make something cool out of it. But in this case, I decided that this pose or a different pose would be better. And it's working, and it makes sense. It looks epic and has everything in it that you would need for a very cool superhero pinup. And now I'm adding some details to the background. I'm trying to keep the details in the background as simple as possible, because I don't want to distract from the main character, from Green Lantern. And I'm just adding basic shapes and forms to the background, and then later on we'll give it a little bit of texture without making them fight against the textures in the foreground. And I'm filling in the blacks for the space, and now in the background. And as you can see, it's working nicely. I'm pleased with it, and it looks, despite the fact that I have sort of some details in there, I am not overloading it. And I think it's working, and I like where it's going because there. By the way, there's my watermelon head, um, and now I'm using a micron fineliner to add some more details to the drawing because I want to give it the extra bit of grit and texture, and I'm trying not to do any sort of cross hatching because although I used to love cross hatching, it has become sort of a you know vicious circle in my case because I can easily end up drawing myself into a corner, and I'm trying to use cross hatching in general as little as possible. But yeah, I think this is going into the right direction. I'm very pleased with it. I'm adding some details to the background here, and now I'm erasing all the pencil lines because in order to see if this drawing and the black and white version is working, and where I need extra lines can only be seen once you've erased all the pencil lines. And now I've added some texture to the energy bursts and some splattering in order to give it that extra bit of you know vividness. And now I'm using a whiteout uh, pen, or yeah, I think it's called whiteout pen, with which I'm creating energy bursts. There's another picture for Instagram. Once again, if you're not following me on Instagram, please consider doing it. And there you can see that I'm using more whiteout, some finer pens and some thicker pens. Sometimes, for example, if you look at the eye of, if you look on the left eye of Green Lantern, you see that I added too much white out there, but I will fix that right away. There, I did it. And that white out gives me a chance to emphasize certain areas a little bit more by adding some more details there. And now I've added some splatter onto his hand and the sword in order to make it look as if the energy is bursting right out of there. I am now adding some screen tones onto the paper, or I'm tracing certain areas that I want to apply the screen tones onto, and this is in order to emphasize Green Lantern, to push him even more into the foreground. And these screen tones are really hard to come by these days, but I still have a few of them and I really like working with them. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm, as you can see, the masking and then cutting it out is a little bit tedious, but it's fun because, when you know that the final result will look cool, it's worth, doing it. And I think it's fun. And, I've placed them now onto the paper. The cool thing is that it's self-applying, and it remains on the paper, but you can still remove parts of it. And now I'm scratching off a little bit of the gray in order to give that extra bit of texture, or add that little bit of illusion of a texture into the drawing. And yeah, as you can see, the drawing is turning out to be really nice. And just imagine I would have quit after failing with the first initial sketch. uh, this is just to show you guys that you should never quit after you didn't like the first attempt. I know a lot of people that will tell me that they are unhappy with what they are drawing, and personally I think that if you draw for long enough and if you spend enough time, you will find a way or a drawing that you like and that you can make a cool pinup out of, or maybe a cool comic panel, whatever the case. But this is how I do it. This is what I do. I try to make everything work. I try to make it look as interesting as possible. And if you give up right away after failing the first time, I can't tell you guys how often I have failed in life in so many um, aspects of life, not just only art, but other things. And yeah, the piece is now finished. I hope you guys like it. I hope you will subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Please also consider following me on Facebook, Instagram, and all these other places. See you soon. Bye bye.